Hello, and welcome to Message in the Middle with Marianne. We all know that life is hard, right? It's messy, it's unpredictable, but it can be wonderful all at the same time. My hope is that we can take a deep dive into self-development topics and explore life's lessons through book clubs, conversations, and interviews. And together, we can uncover the lessons that others have already learned to help us navigate this crazy, wonderful ride called life. Hello and welcome to Message in the Middle. I'm your host, Marianne, and today we're diving into a deeply personal and inspiring conversation. Joining me for this conversation is Erica Neubert Campbell, a breast cancer survivor, author, and executive director of the Pinky Swear Foundation. Having lost her mother to the same disease, Erica says she speaks the vocabulary of cancer from multiple perspectives, offering insight, resilience, and full transparency. In her debut memoir, The Mastectomy I Always Wanted, Erica combines vulnerability with practical advice, guiding others through the physical and emotional mastectomy journey. Erica, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Marianne.
I would love to set the stage with a better understanding of why you chose to share such a difficult, I can only imagine, and personal experience in such a visible way as writing a book, The Mastectomy I Always Wanted.
There are two things that I think really inspired me to write this book. Number one, I love to live my life with authenticity and vulnerability. So I think that's where connection really happens. But secondly, I wanted to pay it forward. And I had an experience where I had a new friend of mine who shared with me in a very personal and intimate way her mastectomy journey. This is somebody I met at work who had heard that I was about to have this surgery. And she pulled me aside after a team meeting and said, I don't know what this means, but I want to tell you that I've had a similar surgery. And do you want to see what it looks like today?
Wow.
Yeah. And, of course, I work in a professional environment. This was someone I hadn't really known very well. But there was just something in me. And I was like, oh gosh, yes, I do. And she was so kind. So we locked ourselves in a bathroom in the office, far off the beaten path. And she ended up taking off her shirt and showing me what her breasts look like today.
Wow.
And I thought, number one, they looked so real, so real. So it just gave me so much hope. I mean, her scars were so faint. And she looked beautiful and healthy. And this was 5 years after she'd had the surgery. In that moment, I was like, oh my goodness, my fear just came down about 50%.
I love that.
Because I was like, okay, I can see what the future will hold for me. This is scary. This is hard. This is going to be tough, but I am going to be on the other side of this. And I was so grateful for that woman to just really put herself in a very vulnerable and authentic position.
Yeah.
And I thought, you know what? I want to do this for someone else someday.
I just love that.
Yeah. The power of hope. And I just suddenly had this peace that came over me. And I was still scared and I was still frightened, but I had so much more strength. And I really wanted to give that back to others.
I love that. That's what I was thinking. When you first said she came up to you, I was thinking my immediate reaction would probably be petrified. Do I want to see? Do I want to know? Is this going to make it worse or better? Right? All those things. But
all of the things.
Yeah, all of the things. Speaking of scared, so I've heard you say that you had 10 years of scary mammograms leading up to this. Is that where the title came from? Was getting the mastectomy a means to an end? Was it something you kind of wanted? I feel weird saying that, but it is in the situation. Is it true?
Well, my mother had been diagnosed with breast cancer many, many years ago. And she did not have a mastectomy as part of her treatment. And that is what made all the difference. And unfortunately, my mother is not with us today. And her breast cancer, she just did what they call a lumpectomy. They just took a little lump out. And, later on, towards the end of her life, there was one physician that said, I think if she'd had a mastectomy, she probably would be here alive today or would be here with us longer. And that was really hard to hear.
Yeah.
And so after she passed away, as you could imagine, I was terrified that that would be me someday.
Yeah.
And I advocated for myself. I made sure that I got mammograms earlier than I expected. But every time I did it, Marianne, like you said, I would have what I'd call, put this in quotes, scanxiety, right? Like that anxiety you feel when you're getting one of those medical tests, when you're waiting for the phone call from the doctor. So after about 10 years, like you said, I kept saying, you keep calling me back. You keep telling me that you think you see something on these mammograms. When are you going to let me just have a mastectomy? And I'll tell you, the doctors were like, no, you don't need that. You're fine. And then I was diagnosed a few years later. So, I had been mentally prepared, but part of the reason I called the book The Mastectomy I Always Wanted was I also had this experience, not just the experience with this woman in the bathroom, but I had this feeling of like, what if instead of feeling like it was a punishment, right? Like this was something bad happening to me. What if I reframed it in my mind to say, this is a choice. This is a choice that I am making to save my life. And it's just like a small shift in words, right? It's just a small shift of your thinking. But when you actually have that empowerment to say, I'm choosing this. Yes, it's hard. Yes, it's going to be painful. But yes, I know it is better for me in the long run to do this. It makes it just a little bit easier. And so I was like, I'm going to choose this. And again, it's like choosing a weapon in a battle you never wanted to fight. But it was something that my mindset was really what made all the difference.
I totally get that. It gives you back the power in what was going on. It wasn't just something going on happening to you. You now had a little bit of direction in how that went out, how it played out. So I totally can get that. I'm curious, again, I feel like, I don't know if this is an appropriate question, but did you feel any peace after making the decision and after going through it, just in knowing that that's it, I'm done, it's over, and I don't have to keep through with that, those scares every 6 months up. You're probably doing them every 6 months at that point, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, was there a peace just in that?
First of all, that is the most appropriate question. I love this question because this is what I talk to women about. So I get calls now all the time, Marianne, from friends of friends who are newly diagnosed. And I say that the waiting period is the absolute worst part. And I would even go so far to say as it's worse than the surgery itself. So the peace, I experienced tremendous peace. And you know when that peace began? That peace began the minute I woke up from surgery.
That's powerful.
And yes, was I still in pain? You bet. Was I still uncomfortable? Yes. But the waiting was over, and the fear and the anxiety and the unknowns, that part was over, and I could focus on healing. And I would say I felt so much relief. And many women that I've talked to have said, oh my gosh, thank you. Because I gave them that hope to say, you will feel better. I know it's so counterintuitive, but you will feel peace the minute the surgery is over. Even though you still have surgeries and, you still have stitches and you still have all of the other things, that was when the peace came. It is a mind game between the moment you're diagnosed and the moment you have that surgery. It is all a mind game. And that ends the minute you wake up.
I do love that people can understand that, and that it does give people hope just to have sort of that weight lifted off them when they come out of it. I'm curious though, so just to set the stage and inform people, I know everybody's different. We're going to generalize and everybody has an individual situation, but generally speaking, so you come out of surgery, you're going to go through a couple other surgeries to reconstruct. What does that look like when do you stop feeling, I guess the word whole comes to mind again. When do you start feeling like yourself again? Is that 2 months, 6 months, a year, 5 minutes? What does that look like?
Yeah, that took longer than I probably wanted. It certainly is jarring when you first wake up and you sort of look down. And I will tell you, I had to wait a day or two to look down.
Sure.
Right? Because, there's a lot of things attached to the way you look, for a woman. But I did start to feel like myself as I went through that reconstructive process. I remember a week after my surgery, you go back to the surgeon and you sort of have he's checking out the stitches and how it's healing. And the nurse first came in and she goes, oh my goodness. And I looked down, I'm like, wait, what? She goes, you look so good. And I said, excuse me? I looked down and I thought I looked like Frankenstein,
Yeah.
right? I had these incredibly large stitches that were crooked and just, kind of scary looking. And she said, no. Trust me. I have seen these before. The surgeon did an excellent job. I know you don't look like it right now, but you are going to look great someday. And I was like, I'm sorry, what?
Yeah, but she knew.
She knew.
Yeah.
And, that was when she kept saying the word trust.
Mm.
And I was like, okay, no offense, nurse, but I have just met you. And, there were so many times I had to trust people in that journey. And you know what, Marianne? They were right. And as I had the reconstructive surgeries, I do start to look like I do like I did before. And, I know that there have been, like you said, I don't want to generalize. And I know that some women have had some struggles, but, if you get a really good surgeon, they can work miracles. And I wear the same clothes, the same size. I look the same. I wear the same bathing suit. And, you are more than your body parts, right? And so I thought I looked different, but I'll be honest, many people didn't notice.
Yeah.
We all wear kind of like, baggy shirts or,
Yeah. Yeah.
But it did take time. I would say all in, it took about a full year to feel completely back to normal. But I did start to feel back to normal after about 3 to 4 weeks.
I think that's great to set the stage for people just so they can, not to compare because everybody's different, but it just gives you an idea of what to expect, right? When you were talking about trusting other people and they've been through this before, what struck me is you trusted yourself. And that was so important.
Yes. Thank you for picking up on that. Yeah. I mean, that's where it starts.
Yeah, that's where it starts. It was key to your decisions. You advocated for yourself the whole time, which I hope is a theme people will take away from this, because whether it's this or anything that you're trying to figure out, you pressed the doctors. You pressed for what you felt was right for you. And I think that's an important message.
Absolutely. And I think thank you for pointing that out. I think what's really also important is I had information to trust myself. Like I did, I don't really encourage people to Google these kinds of things because there's a lot of things you can find on the internet that may or may not be real or true or scary. But that's why I wrote the book. And then, in the opening, I say, I'm not here to pressure anyone either way or the other. I want to just give the information so that someone can have that trust in themselves and, being able to make your own decisions and have that power back. That's where the trust begins. It begins with yourself.
And I just want to say for folks, if anybody knows somebody or they themselves are going through this, or you're just curious, I have the book, and I will just say, I mean, you fully unveil everything. There are pictures of you and your breasts before and a picture of you and your breasts in the middle, I'll say, and you and your breasts post, right?
Yeah. Yep.
And I think I'm going to be truly transparent and at first say, it was shocking at first because I have never seen that. Just like you said, you had never seen that. But then I thought about it and I was like, this is so informative and so helpful to somebody that's going to go through it, because they can see the stages and they can, instead of picturing all the crazy things we always picture when we're going through something, right? We always think of the most possible worst scenarios. At least they can have an idea and they can see some reality. And I think that's helpful. So thank you for being so transparent with everybody. I think it's worth saying that. And for folks that are interested, just point that out. There are pictures in the book.
Yes, I do want to be very transparent about that because, you want to know what you're getting into when you see the book. But I will say that I have had such positive feedback for that. Not only the bravery, right? I do, I'm a professional woman. I'm a mom. I'm a leader in the community.
Yeah.
But I really felt like it was important to normalize it. I wanted to normalize the conversation and normalize, what normally happens behind closed doors. Because, I met with my doctor and of course, he was trying to describe to me what was going to happen. I asked a lot of questions. And I finally said, do you have any pictures? he's like, no, I don't. And, again, he asked me to trust him, which of course I wanted to do. But that's where I was like, there's a gap here.
Yeah.
And I'm going to be brave enough to fill it.
I love that. I love that. It definitely gives something to get your head around, more concrete than just what you're going to find on Google. So in the opening pages of your book, you say, someone I loved once gave me a box full of darkness, and it took me years to understand that this too was a gift. First of all, I thought that was beautiful, but I guess I want to know, at this point, do you think there was a silver lining, and what was it?
Yeah, I think there's a double silver lining, actually. It took me a long time to reconcile my mom's passing because, there could have been different choices in her treatment plan. And the way I reconcile it is that, her passing and the choices that she made, the silver lining is that I got to make different ones.
Yeah.
I got to redeem her. So when it was my turn to make the literally exact same decision between a lumpectomy and a mastectomy, I chose the mastectomy, which she did not, but it has made all the difference and it has saved my life. So that was the box of darkness, was losing her.
Yeah.
And the silver lining is that I got to save my own life.
Beautiful.
And I think the second silver lining for me is, and this is what I talk to women about so often, is, taking my mother's experience out of this. If you have just a lumpectomy, you are then, yes, it's shorter recovery, it's less invasive, and all of the things that make that attractive. But what is challenging in the future, and they don't talk about this, is that it plays with your mind afterwards. You still have to get mammograms the rest of your life. You are under even higher scrutiny and more scanxiety, and you run the risk of it coming back. And yes, that's a smaller risk, but the mental game is very, very challenging. So the silver lining for me is today, I had the full double mastectomy. I have fully reconstructive breasts, and I don't think about it. And it's not that I don't think about, sort of the surgery. It's more, I don't worry about getting breast cancer. I don't have real breasts. I can't. I cannot have a recurrent. I mean, okay, there's apparently like a very 0.000001% it could come back, but it's so small that the fear is gone for me. All that scanxiety I held in my heart for 10 to 15 years, gone. And that to me was another box of darkness that I was carrying for so long. And I don't carry that anymore. It was like taking off a weighted backpack.
Yeah. And again, another area where peace was found. You can sit in the peace of feeling like you've beat this and it's gone from your life. Yeah. So I get it. I guess what comes to mind is there's probably no great decision, right?
Correct.
And laughingly, what my old team used to know me for as one of the sayings was, pick the least bad decision. If there's no great decision, well, what's the least bad decision? That's all you can do. And for everybody, that's different. But I get why you made your choice and understand the peace that would come with that.
And I respect people who make choices on both sides. And I've counseled women to this day that make choices on both sides, and they all make the right choice for them. And I celebrate that.
Yeah, great point. What surprised you the most along the way with this? So it wasn't brand new to you because you went through some of it with your mom, and then you had that great woman at work who kind of shared some with you. But were there things that surprised you?
It was really surprising how hard it was to accept help. So, you think, okay, I'm going to need help for this. I'm going to need help. I had 2 young kids when I had this surgery, and, I thought, all right, no problem. I'm sure my community will help me. And they did. But at first I felt awkward about it. I felt awkward about receiving so many supports. People brought me food. People brought me, babysitters. Somebody mowed my lawn. Somebody did my laundry. And I felt really guilty about it at first. Normally as women, we are givers.
Yes.
And it was so surprising. At first I was like, oh, no, I don't need help. But no, I do. You know what I mean? Yes. And that was just a really interesting, I was obviously grateful for all of that help, but it was just strange to be in a receiving position of receiving of all that support. Again, we as women are known to give. And I found that surprising.
I feel like there's a bigger life lesson there, right? Because I think, to your point, I do think that that's our natural inclination to really say we don't need help when we definitely could use help. And when we learn to delegate things, we do it at work, but we don't want to do it at home for whatever reason, right? So I think the more we can learn to accept help and delegate where we're truly not needed, that's a win.
Yeah, that was really funny to me. And I was like, Erica, these people are getting joy from helping you. Let them help.
Yes, yes. There's a saying out there somewhere. I don't remember what it is, but right, where we're preventing people from the ability to give you help, to let them shine, let them get the joy out of it, all those things when we block them from helping us. So, yeah.
And actually help in surprising ways too. I remember, and this is in the book, one of my best girlfriends is the most organized human of all time. And she said, how can I help you? And I was like, oh, no, I'm fine. We're good. She said, can I make you an FAQ document for your friends?
Yeah.
And I was like, I hadn't thought about that. And so she just listened to me and she said, what are the questions you keep getting? Because, naturally I would have to tell people I was having the surgery and they'd have a million questions. And to be honest, I would get tired of answering the same question over and over.
Sure.
So she put together this FAQ document. We sent it around to everybody and it was a hit. So I did put a copy of that in the book because
I saw that. It was great.
Everybody says that's the most helpful, practical tip. There are practical tips. Get a friend to write an FAQ document.
You know what else I love about that? I've heard this with people that are going through grief too. And you said it when people say like, what can I help? It's great when somebody offers to help, but it's even better when they suggest something like, I'm going to get you groceries today, or I'm going to do your lawn today. Cause then you don't have to feel weird coming up with something to ask for. Right. So good for her for coming up with something, and it was helpful. So fantastic.
Yeah. And it was her like God-given gift, right? She's like, that person is organized. So I absolutely agree with that. When someone offers something specific and it's something they already love doing, it's a win-win.
Yeah. So I want to make sure we give a few minutes to talk about your work with Pinky Swear Foundation, because it's related, sort of, and I feel like it's an important cause to get out there. So tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah. This is one of the, you introduced me as my multiple perspectives on cancer.
Yeah.
And this is my, I'm a survivor. I call myself a cancer orphan, losing my mom, but I'm also a leader of a national nonprofit that helps kids with cancer and their families. And Pinky Swear Foundation, there was a 9-year-old boy many years ago who made a pinky swear promise with his dad to keep supporting families financially after he was gone. So this little boy gave away his life savings to other kids before he passed away. And he made his dad that promise that his dad would keep doing it afterwards. So today, Pinky Swear Foundation does just that. We provide financial support to families when their child's in treatment. We'll pay for their mortgage, their rent, car payments, utilities, any kind of, housing, transportation, or food.
And I'm going to get it confused, but how did the order of things work? Were you working there already?
I was.
Wow.
Yes.
So you had that in your history, but were you working there before or after mom?
After my mother had passed away.
Okay. After mom.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's so interesting.
Isn't it interesting? I had been working at Pinky Swear for about a year, and then I was diagnosed myself. And it gave me an even deeper perspective. I don't have a child with cancer, but when I was diagnosed myself, we experienced some financial challenges and unexpected things. Parking at a hospital, it's $20 a day.
Yeah.
And your expenses rise. I had to take a step back from work. All of the things are very similar. Anyone who's been in a cancer journey knows there are hidden costs to cancer. And that's what we do at Pinky Swear Foundation, is we really come in and support so people can not worry about their finances and focus on the health of their child instead.
I love the work and the mission and your perspective that you must bring to it now. I can't imagine how helpful that is on so many fronts, because you do have that well-rounded experience now. So
it's compassion upon compassion upon compassion.
Yeah.
I hope that I do these families justice.
Yeah.
Because I care about each and every one of them deeply.
Well, and knowledge too. I think about conversations I've had about recovery from addiction. And you'll hear over and over and over and over people say the best counselors, the best people that help walk other people through are people that have gone through it themselves. So to have gone through something like this and now be able to walk other families through and help other families, I think it's just a fabulous gift that you're able to give to them. I'd love to ask what the best piece of advice you got when you were going through this.
Best piece of advice. I think I would say the best piece of advice was to actually, it sounds funny, but to laugh and to not take myself so seriously and to hold a long perspective. That, I sort of, like I said, it was hard for me to receive help sometimes. And then I would, during that time, like I would have a friend come over and we would have a lovely conversation and I'd laugh. And then I would feel guilty about it. Like I shouldn't be having fun right now. But then I got the advice of like, no, it's okay to have joy even in the hard times. It's okay to have fun even when you're in struggle. Like two things can be true at the same time. You can be struggling and you can still be joyful.
Yes.
And so that was the kind of piece of advice that I thought was a little bit surprising, to be honest.
Yeah, but such great advice. Again, I keep going back to references to grief and going through the grieving process. And it just clicked in my head. Well, you were probably going through a grieving process during this as well. You lost a part of your body. You lost a future that you expected that wasn't there anymore. I mean, I'm speaking for you, but I assume that's all true.
100%. Lots of grief. And, and like grief, I went through the 5 stages. I was angry. You'll read that in the book. There's parts I get real angry about it. And then I'm in denial. And then I'm really sad.
Yeah.
And then I accept it.
Yeah.
It's like all those things. And so absolutely, you're so right. There was a big grieving process.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I'm sure it also drudged up all the feelings with your mom.
Yes.
On top of that. So it was a double whammy. So knowing that was the best piece of advice you got, if you leave our listener with only one message, what would that be?
Actually, I'm going to go with the one that I talk about all the time, which is you are not alone. And that is the piece. When I was newly diagnosed, it did feel lonely because at the time I didn't know anybody else who had had a similar struggle other than my mom who was gone. I felt so alone. And you are not alone. And that's the thing. Cancer is a club you never want to join. But when you get there, you actually do end up eventually meeting some of the most wonderful people. And when I tell you you are not alone, you are not alone. And I hope if a woman hearing this or a caregiver hears this, please read the book and at least know that I am here for you. But there are lots and lots of people that are there to support you. You just have to find them.
That's a comforting thought. I wanted to ask you this and we got talking and I went past it, but I want to go back for a second because we were talking about the way you felt after surgery, immediately after. And, it took you a day and then you kind of looked and then you proceeded with the rest of the procedures. I have to assume that getting comfortable with your new body takes a little work.
Yeah.
I don't know the right words to say or ask, but I feel like there's probably a lot that comes with that. It's probably hard to look in the mirror at first. It's probably hard to get dressed the first time. You said you wore the same bathing suit. It's probably hard to put the first bathing suit, to be intimate. I'm just assuming I've not gone through any of this.
Yeah.
How did you get through all of that?
One day at a time, for sure. And you are correct in all those things you just said. All of those firsts are true. And, for a while too, your body is just like, what is this? And someone asked me once, how do you feel today? And it'd been about, maybe 9 months. So, I'd been in this new reality for about 9 months for a fair amount of time. And my answer then was, it feels like it's a necklace that I can never take off. Like it felt like a foreign piece of my body, or foreign piece. I felt like a droid out of Star Wars. If any of you are Star Wars fans, like I felt artificial. But over time, you would be surprised at how the body heals, but the mind heals.
Yeah.
And, again, for me now, it's been 6 years and I can't remember how it used to be anyway. And that I think is really interesting about how adaptable we are as humans.
Yes.
And I think about people who have it far worse than I, maybe someone who's had an arm amputated or a leg. And I see that in children, certainly through my work, but I also see incredible resilience and incredible adaptability and incredible success for a lot of those people, far more successful than I am. And, and they have overcome those challenges. So that to me is just a testament to, how that works. And I will also say, Marianne, I did seek some mental health therapy later on because I wanted to make sure that, yes, my body was healed, but my mind was equally healed. And I think that's an important piece. I also want to normalize that. It's okay to talk to a therapist. I resisted it. I will be the first to hold up my hands and tell you my surgeon actually was the one who pressed me on it. And I was like, oh no, I'm fine. I'm totally resilient. And he's like, no, he's like, yeah, I get that. I see you are, but I'm going to encourage you to do it anyway. And I was like, okay. And I went kicking and screaming and I never looked back.
Love that.
And it wasn't forever. It wasn't forever. It was several months and I didn't feel differently in the beginning, but then over time I did. And I really want to advocate for that. And I want to say it's also totally acceptable to talk about mental health is just as important as physical health.
I love that. And I will even generalize it, right? I think just having the conversation around normalizing getting help with whatever you're going through. It doesn't have to be forever. It doesn't mean any kind of thing. It's okay. Just go get the help to talk through some things and you'll feel better on the other side. So important. Again, I want to thank you for being so transparent. Is there anything we didn't talk about that you wish we would have covered?
Well, another thing that I often talk about, and I'll just leave your listeners with this, is trust the process. We talked about trust in the middle here, but trust the process. And, to this day, sometimes it's hard for me to say that advice to myself, being totally transparent.
Yeah.
But, I had to trust others and trusting the process and knowing that even the valleys are equally as important as the mountaintops. And you have to go through both to get to the other side. Yeah. So trust that process and trust the journey.
I love that. Thank you so much for being here with us today, for sharing your book and being so transparent with everybody and sharing your journey with us. I'm so glad that you're past it and you're healthy and you're able to share and help other people.
Yes. And I wish the same for all of your listeners. And I want to say thank you, Marianne, for the thoughtfulness of this conversation.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for listening to this episode of Message in the Middle with Marianne. If you enjoyed the podcast, please take a minute to share it and write a review as it helps bring new listeners to our audience. If you'd like to keep the conversation going between episodes, please join us at Facebook group Message in the Middle with Marianne.